I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. 2 things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to, this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. The last year and a half has been hard for me, to say the least. Last March, my brilliant and hilarious and beautiful girlfriend Natalie suddenly passed away. Everyone always gave shit about us because of politics. We met in college when we were poli-sci majors. She is very liberal, think AOC, and I'm pretty conservative. We actually met because we were serving as treasurers for our school's college Democrats and Young Republicans clubs, respectively. And our groups would get together for drinks or bowling or laser tag once a month. Well, Natalie and I bonded over a lot of shared interests and we hit it off. Even if we didn't see eye to eye on many issues, debating her was stimulating and formed the cornerstone of our relationship. We've had debates that went on until dawn. We just bounced off each other. She liked to joke that we were drift compatible. I wanted to marry this woman, but she passed away before we got a chance to talk about marriage. I'm in therapy and I'm working through not having her in my life anymore, but it's been rough. Then Rona happened and I got laid off, so I had to move back in with my parents and figure out what I am supposed to do now. My parents mean well, but they got married really young and are more conservative and religious than me. They've been trying to set me up on dates with single girls from their church since I moved back home. But I don't want to date these girls. No offense to them, but it's a small town in the American breadbasket. They don't share the same interests as me and it feels like their only goal in life is to be a good Christian wife and produce a lot of babies. Trying to talk to them about current events is excruciating for me. The girls my parents tried to set me up with take everything they read on Facebook or hear from Fox News for face value. It makes me miss Natalie and our debates more. My parents mean well. I know they want me to find a nice girl and settle down with her, but not like this. They are nothing like Natalie and never will be. I miss her, even if my folks didn't like her ideas. But when I told them the other night that I wanted them to stop setting me up on dates with these girls, they freaked out and told me that I needed to consider settling down since I just turned 30. They're good girls from great families, I know that, and my parents like them more than they liked Natalie, but she was my one and only. I don't think it's fair for anyone when I still love her. They are even more angry at me because I told them that I just don't see myself getting married anytime soon. But like I said, Natalie was my soulmate and I just can't see myself being with anyone else but her. Yet, they are insisting that I need to find a woman and settle down and give them grandchildren. We were seriously close to talking about marriage. But around the time she died, It was more like how funny it would be if the bridal party wore blue and the groomsmen wore red because the bride is a Democrat, and the groom is a Republican / Romeo and Juliet deal. I wish we got to do that. Natalie thought it was hilarious. I have been with my wife for 10 years now, and she always has had this habit of making me look bad with our finances. Whenever anything regarding spending money comes up, she will always say how broke we are and she doesn't have the money to do this or buy that. The thing is, we are doing well financially. We have decent jobs and combine our salary is roughly $125K / year. As of today, our net worth is more than $1 million, but less than 2. I had saved / invested a lot before getting married, so I gave us a good head start. I control the finances / take the lead, but we both agreed to living a very modest life. We both have our cars from college, for example, Honda and Toyota. She knows everything about our finances because at least once a month I go over it with her every time I deposit money in our investment accounts or our kids' college funds. For banking, we have an emergency fund and I budget everything else to go straight into investments. We basically stay right at $10,000 in our bank savings account and $500 in our checking account after bills. Most of the time there is more than $500 in our checkings, but once I pay our CC each month, I then move anything extra. We always use the CC, so it's not like we only have $500 to spend. Our CC limit is $25,000. A few months ago we had dinner with her friends and they talked buying a new car. My wife said something like, "I wish I could get a new car, but I'm always broke after paying the bills." We still have our college cars. Wife does not want a new car. She will go on to talk about if she had money what she would want to buy, and it always makes me feel ashamed. This "I'm broke" story has been happening for years. When we were driving home, I asked her about. She understood we have the money, but it's how she feels because her bank account is always low. I said I can increase our budget or keep more money in our bank if she wants. Since we are doing well, I'm okay with spending more. She said no and again was happy with our finances. I explained that when she says we are broke, it makes me look bad and I feel ashamed. It's as though I can't provide for the family and / or I am bad with money. She doesn't see it that way. The same conversation has come up numerous times about us being broke. Recently, I reminded her numerous times it makes me feel and look bad in front of friends and family. I told her if she keeps saying stuff like that, I will reveal that we are doing well with money. I gave her a few reminders I'd eventually do this, but she kept going with the "I'm broke" story. At a dinner with her sister and parents, the same "I'm broke" story came up. I piped in and said, "It's weird to hear a millionaire say they are broke." My wife said, "I'm not though." And I quickly say, "We are millionaires and you know that. We go over our finances every month." Well, the "I'm broke" story stopped after that and the night went on as usual. A little later the same thing happens with her friends and I use the same line. Now my wife is mad at me for using that line and revealing roughly how much money we have. She said it seems like I'm gloating. I say it's better than making me look like I'm running us into the ground financially. I'm pretty open to us spending money and I don't restrict her spending. She has the CC to spend money monthly. Most of the month we have far more than $500 in our checking, but I move anything above to our investments once I pay the CC every month. I know I won't have any big expenses then. If I do, we have the CC limit and the $10,000 emergency cash. We live on a really cheap area and had a low cost of living. We never felt RHE need to upgrade until we wanted to start having kids. I didn't have to change our lifestyle much to save a lot. My job is in demand and pays well because nobody wants to live out in my area. So after expenses I take home a lot more than I would living in a major city. Probably 3 to 4 times more net savings annually if I had to guess. She doesn't want a new car and has told me that multiple times. She doesn't like driving and feels comfortable with her current car. She doesn't know what she wants to do when she retires. I know I'll be golfing, games, and eating edibles most days. I don't do any of this much now because we have kids and they will be my focus for a long time. I maybe golf 1 or 2 times a month AMD, that's the only times I take edibles. I'll speak more with my wife about this. I think she may not feel like it's her money since she never saved much before we got engaged. He's a fashion photographer. meaning he works alongside many beautiful women in his profession: stylists, hair and makeup artists, and of course, models. This is actually how we met. I modeled my way through college and he photographed me, after which we became friends and eventually started dating. We have been together now for almost 3 years. I've since stopped modeling, but he is still a photographer. Never once in our relationship has he given me any reason to question his fidelity. With the exception of me, he has never dated or even befriended any of the models he has photographed. That was, until Rachel came into the picture. I've met Rachel. She seems like a fun chick, the type of girl who draws a lot of positive attention just by entering a room. She's beautiful, but her personality really shines through. She makes you feel like you're her best friend when you're talking to her. A very cool person through and through. That said, I'm not the only one who feels this way. My boyfriend also adores Rachel. The first time he photographed her, he stayed late at the studio and discussed ideas for their next shoot for nearly 3 hours. He was actually late for a night out with me because of it. But he's always had terrible time management, so I didn't think anything of it. The lateness has now become a steady, recurring factor in their shoots together. They hang out long after the stylists and makeup artists leave the studio. They also text a lot, and he's always smiling to himself and laughing when he reads the messages she sends him. At first he would show them to me and try to include me in on all the fun, without me asking. But he abruptly stopped doing that around 2 weeks ago. He tilts his phone away from me now when Rachel messages him. I'm not the jealous type, but if my BF had a history of doing this with the other models, I'd let it slide. The fact that he is only like this with Rachel, and me, I suppose, makes me wary of what might have transpired between them. Rachel herself has stopped talking to me. We used to communicate and have an easy, casual friendship via IG and Snapchat, but she pretty much ignores me now. Guilty conscience? I don't know. The real kicker is, my boyfriend now has a photo of Rachel as the wallpaper on his phone. He's apparently proud of the concept and the editing, and claims it has nothing to do with Rachel herself. Which is totally believable, but doesn't sit right with me. I told him that and he told me I was being irrational. Rachel is single, by the way. She and her BF broke up around 3 weeks ago. I really don't want to fall into the jealous GF trope, but what else am I to think? I don't want to make crazy demands and accuse my BF of cheating on me. Even emotionally, but he really does seem to be fond of this girl in a way that really hurts me. He has other female friends, and he doesn't act that way with them. He's capable of being friendly with a girl without flirting or acting suspicious, but with Rachel it's different. He has slowly become very attached to her, and I feel like I'm losing him. I have expressed this to him a couple of times, but he always tells me I have nothing to worry about and that he and Rachel are just kindred when it comes to photography. The long nights, constant texting, and phone wallpaper mean nothing. Oh, by the way, she's practically naked in the photo and it wasn't taken for any sort of publication, just for fun. Am I being irrational? Unreasonable? How would you feel in this situation? What would you do? Update. My photographer boyfriend has been growing very close to one of his models, and acting dismissive of my concerns regarding their work relationship. He has a practically naked photo of her as his phone wallpaper. WTF am I supposed to think? He and I are meeting for lunch in an hour. He confessed. I'm kind of a mess right now, but I'm lucky enough to have an amazing support system and a clear head. That's all I really wanted out of this unfortunate situation. My boyfriend, sorry, ex-boyfriend, has never taken nude or even partially nude photos of me. Although I modeled in high school and university, my primary focus has always been stage acting. He took my headshots. That's how we met. Not that it really changes anything. Just a bit of insight, I guess. When we were younger and when the relationship was newer, I would accompany him to his shoots all the time. But my own career is very time-consuming nowadays. I know of multiple model/photographer relationships where they accompany each other to every shoot. And I've nothing against doing that, but I personally would rather just trust that my SO is on their best behavior. Obviously what happened here kind of squashes that, but I stand by it. If I have to be there in order to make sure my SO faithful, chances are they'll find other ways to cheat. Okay, now for the good stuff, or I guess, the bad stuff. I met him for lunch Friday afternoon. We went to our favorite sushi joint overlooking the ocean, and I ordered more than I could handle, stuffing my face while trying to decide how to broach the topic of Rachel, but most importantly, our relationship. I went into that meeting with a righteous, ass-kicking speech prepared, but I forgot every word of it almost immediately after we sat down. I guess he could tell there was something on my mind, because he asked me if I was all right, if he had done anything to upset me. Snorts. Yes, Ian, you've upset me very much, actually. As soon as I gathered the confidence to look him in the eyes, I point-blank asked him, "What's going on between you and Rachel?" His mouth flew open as if he were completely and utterly taken aback by the implication, but I cut him off with, "Do not bullshit me." I tried my best not to let anger get the best of me. I really did. I wanted to stay cool, calm, and collected like so many women on this sub. You know the ones. Those intense stories of cheating husbands wherein the wife takes to relationships, garners a ton of support, and then updates us later with a well-constructed storybook post detailing the evidence she has collected against him and the meeting she had with her uncle or sibling, who just so happens to be a divorce lawyer. Yeah, I'm not a badass like that. I wish I were. But I'm honestly just an overly emotional doormat, and I knew going into this meeting that I was either going to cry or gouge his eyes out with my mind. Because I had somewhere to be later, I took a hard left and got super angry. He could see it in me, the anger bubbling over. The people in the restaurant were starting to stare at us, too. In order to save face, I threw money on the table, with tip, and told him to meet me in the parking lot. If I'd had a switchblade on me, I can't say for certain I wouldn't have channeled my inner jet and beat his to the pavement. Kidding. Totally kidding. We met inside my car. He climbed in after me, his head down as though he were ashamed or, I don't know, guilty? I asked him how, and he explained everything to me. No preamble whatsoever. The moment he met Rachel, he felt some type of way towards her. He couldn't tell whether it was just a silly crush or something more, but he knew she felt it, too. How cute. They kissed the first night they met. The night he nearly stood me up. They had crazy, emotional, forbidden intimate the night she and her boyfriend called it quits. And they've been ever since. He mentioned he has always used a condom with her, but I don't care. I'm getting tested. I should mention Rachel was the one who was broken up with in her previous relationship. I don't know why or how. I didn't ask and I don't care to know. Funnily enough, Ian said he doesn't want to be with Rachel, he wants to be with me. And he even provided text messages to show that he's the one who decided not to pursue anything with her on official grounds. But I told him I give zero about what he wants. And unless he can go W//O his eyes, he should get the out of my car and erase me from his mind before I erase him. I literally said that. In any case, I went home later that day and drank a lot. My friends and family, and most of Ian's friends and family, have rallied around me in support. I guess he told his mother we broke up and how it happened, because she called me this morning and said she's disgusted with her son and that if I need anything at all, she's always there for me. For real, I'm going to miss his family. They're good people. The best people. This is my first adult breakup, by the way. The type of breakup where you're required not only to break up with your so but with their family and friends, as well. These people you've spent so much time getting to know and growing to love, are suddenly not in your life anymore, and it's, well, it's kind of daunting, really. Daunting and sad and infuriating all at the same time. So, that's the conclusion to this story. That's what happened. P.S. He admitted to cheating with Rachel and then I dumped his. So far, his mother, his teenaged stepbrother, and 2 male friends of his, have reached out to me saying how disgusted, ashamed and embarrassed they are on his behalf. On top of 3 mutual friends. It hasn't been 2 days yet.